ACC basketball is happening. We are underway. Most teams have played 2 conference games already, and so we have our first update. Now our second ACC power rankings in basketball. I've got this broken in half. This first group you'll see, these are teams that I think are at minimum on the outside looking in. Some of them are already probably dead, not even on the bubble. Others still have some life, like Wake Forest, Cal, Stanford. Definitely have some life left, but these are teams that I don't really think are going to make the tournament. So I'm going to go through these a little quicker. Then you'll see the top 8. I think all of them have a really good shot to make the tournament. So that kind of segues into one broad point, is that this conference is way deeper. Last year, there were probably not 8 great teams in the conference. This year, there are 8 teams that are pretty darn good. And if you look here, there's a couple more that are at minimum scary and dangerous. So the conference has really improved. At the bottom is Boston College. They are not one of those teams. I think they're pretty bad. They are really, really bad offensively, barely in the top 300 in offensive efficiency. They just lost in Atlanta to Georgia Tech. They have a loss to UMass. They have a loss to Tulane, to Davidson, to Central Connecticut, their worst loss of the year. That one was at home. They are not great in football, basketball, or baseball. This is a real low point for college athletics. Above them is Pittsburgh, the Panthers. They actually gave a real battle to the Clemson Tigers. I thought they looked pretty good throughout that contest, but they are 0-2 in the ACC. They're 7-8 overall. Neither their offense nor their defense is that great. I will say I did really like Cameron Corrin is really good in the post. I thought he was pretty tough to stop. And DeMarco Minor, both of them can shoot the 3. Both of them seniors. They've got 2 that are pretty good there, but I don't know that there's a whole lot of depth around them. And that's what stood out, is Clemson just had way more depth in Clemson's win at Pitt. Above them, we have the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who just beat Boston College. Georgia Tech lost Nathan George to Syracuse. I was pretty down on them, but they were competitive in a loss on the road to Duke, and then they won by 12 at home against Boston College. They're 10-5. Like, I have them pretty low, but pretty respectable start to ACC play, and that's coming off of 4 straight wins against lesser opponents. So they've now won 5 out of 6. They only lost there Duke. They'll host Syracuse, and what I kind of feel is like a must-win game. You beat Syracuse at home before your trip to Miami, maybe I should move the Yellow Jackets up, so that they have a chance to prove my low ranking wrong here. Florida State, on the other hand, they also had a very close loss to Duke. They were at home. They lost to Duke by 4. That's right after losing to UNC by 13. They had 2 wins over weak opponents before that. But then prior to that, they lost 5 straight. We're going to find out. They host NC State and then go to Syracuse. They're kind of on life support as it is. Above them is Notre Dame, who just lost by 1 at Cal. It was a 4-point play to win it for Cal, which is pretty crazy. We also saw a 4-point play to send it to overtime in the Georgia-Auburn game. Auburn got fouled shooting a 3, made the first 2, then intentionally missed the last one to get a rebound and score with 0.7 on the clock when they shot it. Sent it to overtime. Georgia ended up beating them. Georgia being Clemson's best win of the year. I think Georgia's really good. But crazy that 2 4-point plays in the final seconds decided some games. Above them, I have the Hokies. And the Hokies are a complex, weird team to try to figure out. I had them 14. A lot of you said that was too low. And maybe that was too low. So I moved them up to 13. They were at home and they beat Virginia. Really, really good win. They then turn around and go on the road and lose to Wake Forest. Not a horrible loss, but not great. So they're 1-1 in ACC play. They're 56 in KenPom. What has me hesitating is 4 of their wins are in overtime, with 1 being a triple OT win against Virginia. So they're 4-0 in overtime. It screams a little bit of luck. So they take care of the basketball, but I'm not sold. I'm not sold on the Hokies quite yet. Now, Syracuse was tricky because they got Donnie Freeman back. He was horrible in the first half against Clemson. Shook that rust off, was excellent in the second half. So while they are only 0-1 in ACC play, 9-5 overall, grading on a bit of a curve because they just got their star player back. So I think that makes a big difference. Then we have Stanford. Stanford's another interesting one. They've played a pretty soft non-conference schedule where they lost to Seattle and UNLV, kind of bad losses, but they beat St. Louis and Colorado. They're 12-3. They split with Notre Dame. not a great team to lose to at home. Notre Dame, they lose 47-40, pretty bad on their offense. Their offense is ranked only 107. They turn around and they beat Louisville, though. So the win of the year for an ACC team, certainly in conference play. So that's pretty shocking. That's why, despite having a weak schedule, despite having a offense that's not in the top 100 at 12-3, I have Stanford not too low there at 11. And then 10, the Cal Bears. So we've got both California teams right next to each other. Cal is 13-2. They lost to Louisville, but beat Notre Dame. So kind of the reverse of Stanford, which makes sense because a lot of teams are going out and hitting both in a West Coast trip. But Cal also has that win over UCLA. Their offense and their defense are both decent. They also have played a mostly weak schedule, so we've got a lot to find out about Cal, but they could be decent. And then the last team in this sort of tier of teams that I probably think aren't going to make the tournament, the 61st ranked in KenPom, 10-5 Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Steve Forbes has been there a little while. They still haven't done really anything under him. They have lost 2 of 3. A blowout at home to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's really good, but you lose by 31 is not so good. Then they lose by 13 at NC State. I watched that one. They looked outclassed, but then they go. Then they are at home and they beat the Hokies. Pretty decent win there. They're going to host Miami and then go to North Carolina. Then we'll know about them. So give us another week and we'll know if Wake Forest is really any good. So that's the quick rundown of sort of the bottom tier of the conference, which really isn't that bad. Let's look at the top teams. And here's where some of these decisions were tougher. And here's where we'll spend most of our time. First, I'd like to tell you about a sponsor. I want to pause real quick and tell you how you could support this channel. Certainly liking this video and subscribing to the channel helps a lot. And another thing you can do is support our sponsors. One of them, Section 103. They released a line of Clemson apparel. This shirt is part of that line. This one features the Clemson cadence count. They have a lot of other different unique designs that hit on Clemson traditions. They have them on t-shirts. They have good-looking polos and hats. So jump over there, jump to their website, section103.com, and use code RYAN10 for 10% off so they know I sent you. All right. Now, at number 8, I have NC State. Last time we did this, NC State had just beat Ole Miss. They had that fiery, weird presser by their coach who kind of threw the team under the bus, said they weren't tough. They needed to toughen up. They responded by beating Ole Miss. Then they went out and it seems like they're playing better. They beat Wake Forest right after that. Then they come home and lose to Virginia by 15. So maybe the coach, Will Wade, is right and they need some toughness and he's instilling it the best he can. But losing by 15 at home to really anyone, but especially to a team that should be your peer in Virginia is pretty disappointing. They are 10-5. I think they're probably a tournament team. They're still ranked quite well, 31st by KenPom, highly respected. Another weird press conference or kind of Q&A with Will Wade. He got asked about Darian Williams, who has been, maybe a little bit less than super duper elite lately. And he got extremely defensive and was super rude. Said it was a bad question. But last 3 games, Darian Williams has 7, 8, and 1 point. I think the question was probably asked after the Wake Forest game where, he had 9 points combined across 2 games. Pretty reasonable question. Weird as a Clemson fan. A lot of Clemson people wanted Will Wade as the coach to come to Clemson years ago. He doesn't, goes to LSU, gets in all sorts of trouble, ends up in the ACC eventually with NC State, but not covering himself in glory in terms of how he conducts himself in front of the media. Kind of embarrassing at times. But, if they win, then he's pushing the right buttons and no one cares. Number 7, I have Miami. I had them 5 before. I've dropped them, and that's really no fault of their own. It's just their schedule. Have only played 1 top 100 team since December 3rd. So on December 2nd, they beat Ole Miss by 9. Since then, Miami has beaten Southern Miss, Louisiana Monroe, FIU, North Florida, and a home win over Pitt. So they just haven't played anyone in a while. So we're going to have to learn more about them. I think they're pretty good. They're 38 in KenPom, but they just haven't played anyone in quite a while. So they dropped below some of these other teams. UNC, the biggest dropper here because they went to Dallas and got beat pretty bad by SMU. SMU, I was able to watch a pretty good chunk of that game, and SMU just looked like the better team. I think SMU is good. I thought they were good last year. They're really good on offense, ranked 15th in KenPom. And they went up and scored 97 on the Tar Heels, which is pretty surprising. They have losses to Vanderbilt and LSU, but they now have wins against Butler, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and North Carolina, and they're 12-2. I think SMU is probably pretty good and probably on the right side of the bubble right now. So really impressive win by SMU. Really disappointing for UNC. UNC, of course, had that nice win against Ohio State just a couple weeks ago, but Ohio State is 39 in KenPom. Like, they're good, but they're a football school that hasn't quite, like, we don't know how good they really are. I think they're good offensively. I don't know that Ohio State is a banner win quite yet. All right, next up, we have the Clemson Tigers. They're 35 in KenPom, and they are number 4 in my ACC power ranking. So they move up. I don't know that they beat anyone amazing, but since that pretty devastating loss to BYU, they've now rattled off 5 straight wins. They were kind of lackadaisical, hungover almost against Mercer. Then they beat South Carolina. Then they blew a big lead, but they hung on and won against Cincinnati. I thought Syracuse looked like a good team with Donnie Freeman back, and they were able to go on the road in the ACC, something you do not take for granted. Louisville at Stanford showed us that. They go on the road. They're the better team. They win by 3, but they led most of the way and looked like the superior program, frankly, as compared to Syracuse. Beat Syracuse. They turn around, go right back on the road to Pittsburgh. Pitt gives them a battle closer than I would have liked, but they're 2-0 in the ACC with 2 road wins. They now host SMU. That'll be a good separating kind of game. If Clemson beats SMU, you really got to start giving them a lot of credit. They are 12-3. Their losses to Alabama and BYU, while they held leads in the second half, which is frustrating, those are 2 teams ranked in the top 13 of KenPom. Their only bad loss, and it's really not that bad, was a true road loss at Georgetown. Georgetown's only 9-5, but they're not bad. And to lose on the road, that environment in DC was awesome. I think that's pretty forgivable. All right. Above them, we have the Virginia Cavaliers at number 3 in the conference. They move up by virtue of beating NC State and UNC dropping that game. But Virginia is 12-2, and they lost to Virginia Tech. That's on the road in triple overtime. They turned around, went on the road to Raleigh and beat NC State. I think that's a pretty impressive win. They are 17th offensively in KenPom. Really, Ryan Odom's changed their identity. They are an offensive squad. They could score points. And they scored 85 and lost. I guess it's triple overtime, so maybe not as impressive. But they scored 85 in the loss to Virginia Tech. They scored 76 in their win over NC State. The defense is still decent, ranked 40. Top 2, Louisville had a chance to be number 1 if they had beat Stanford, because Duke was shaky. Duke had 2 games where it was dicey. And I had to hey, Georgia Tech is up. Hey, Florida State is winning. I got to watch these. Kind of a check the score kind of games. And in both cases, Duke was able to pull away for a 6-point win at home against Georgia Tech, and then a 4-point win on the road at Florida State. Not super, super impressive, but this is a good, solid Duke team. Tons of length. I thought that made a difference in their wins. Louisville, I mean, they shoot a lot of threes, so they're going to sort of live by the 3, die by the 3 to some extent. Let me see how they did on the 3 ball. Yeah, I mean, they shot 22% on 27 3-pointers against Louisville. Their offense is heavily predicated on the 3. They shoot more threes as a percentage of their field goal attempts than anybody else. So when they go cold, they're going to have upsets. And so maybe that limits their consistency and their ability to win 5, 6, 7 kind of games in a row against quality competition, but they also can beat anybody. But right now, they deserve to be a little bit behind Duke. Now, their next game is Tuesday. They will host Duke, and that'll determine who's number 1 in our next power rankings, most likely. So there you have it, the top or the full power rankings. I think the ACC is way improved. I think you got 8 teams there that are probably better than 50-50 that make the tournament in my book. And then, Wake Forest, Cal, Stanford, even Syracuse, they are not out. There's probably 15 teams that you kind of respect and think, hey, like, these teams are decent. If we can go on the road and beat Notre Dame, that's good. If we go on the road and beat Virginia Tech, that's a good win. On the road, beat Syracuse, like, I'm taking that to the bank. So there's some decent teams in a way, way improved ACC. So as always, I invite you, tell me who I did not give enough credit. Tell me who I'm overrating. Let me know in the comments. Love the discussion. Lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe. I love putting out this basketball content, but it doesn't do as well as football. So if you could support it by sharing it, by liking it, and of course, subscribing to the channel, that's a signal to me to keep putting out basketball content.